Welcome back to Who Are You, a CSI podcast. I am Lauren, and I have seen CSI through and through around 3 to 4 times.
And I'm Nick, and this is my first time working through the series.
And today we are reviewing Season 1, Episode 4, titled Pledging Mr. Johnson. Director is Richard J. Lewis. Writers are Anthony E. Zeiker, only because Nick sent me a link to a TED Talk where he was talking. So it is Zeiker. Josh Berman, who I feel has written Trek, and I want to look into that. And Eli Talbert. Original air date was October 27th, 2000. And we return back to strip shots for the intro. So no desert, no anything else. We're just back to shots of the strip, of the Vegas Strip.
My partner shouts over my shoulder. My partner's name is Tara. For those of you at home, she goes, "Oh, it's the Bellagio or the MGM, what hotel it was." And I was like, "Yeah, they're back on the Vegas thing."
Back on the Vegas.
I should keep like a calendar tracker or something, like, what on a scale of 1 to 5, how much Vegas is in the opening montage.
That would be fun to find out. Because I think so far, out of 4 episodes, we've only had one that was like not really Vegas, was the last one. Yeah. And otherwise, it's all been shots of Vegas. And we quickly pop over to a boat with 2 fishermen. They're chit-chatting. And they try to start the boat. It's not starting, only to find out that it's caught on a foot in a heel. So they pull out like the heel, the shoe first, and then followed by the very obviously waterlogged foot and leg.
I will say I initially thought this was going to go in a much different direction.
Okay.
Sort of like the red stiletto heel. I was recalling back to the call girls.
Oh, in episode 1.
From the earlier episode, yeah. And I think it's there it is, Lake Mead, by the way.
Oh, okay.
They never say it. It's just so weird.
They don't ever say it.
It's such a big deal. So that's where the Hoover Dam is. And yeah, there's this red. I guess it's just a lower part of a leg. So there's not like nylons or stockings or anything, but it's just sort of like that idea of sticking the leg out from under the dress and just like
the
red
like
shoe
exposing the ankle.
Yeah, I got that like image in my head. I was like, oh, this is like another escort or a call girl or something. Mm-hmm. And then it was totally not that at all. There was never even
spoiler alert. She was not a call girl.
So that may have been my very first prediction of this episode, where I was like, it wasn't really a prediction. I didn't write it down as such, but I was like, oh, it's going to be this. And then it was never even close to that. And I was like, oh, stop making such general assumptions, Nick.
Get on it, Nick. Catherine arrives. Grissom is already on the scene. Jim Brass then shows up, asks if it's drowning, and Grissom poses a very good question, which is, why would you wear 3-inch heels in a lake?
Yeah, to which all I could think of is, I don't know, like dinner cruise or like...
Nick's like, here's all these perfectly good examples of why you would wear 3-inch heels near a lake.
I was like, that part didn't see me. And then the best part is, we do find out later, there's a marina.
Yes.
But
it's not that outlandish to think that someone would dress up in where they could go, like what areas they could access in this boat.
So it's kind of like, but it is it's a good question. They have very limited information to work off of.
Yes.
I think one of the mantras in CSI so far is like, start with the evidence in front of you.
Yes, follow the evidence, right?
Yeah. Yep.
We go to credits, and then we pop on over to the locker room with Nick and Warwick, where Nick, for no reason, does not have a shirt on.
I believe there is a reason.
Well, yeah, so Sarah comes in. There's definitely some heavy flirtation going on between Nick and Sarah.
I wrote flirty. Oh, I guess that's the only one. Oh, yeah. Well,
you're like flirty.
There's more to it, but it's getting it. I thought it was also along the same lines, but the next word I wrote was fraternity, and that is...
Yeah, we're there in a bit.
Nothing to do with that.
Fine suit. And, well, just fine.
That's harassment.
Hey, we have one locker room, and it's my job to be observant.
Evidence vault opens in 5. See you guys later.
Later,
Easy.
bro.
Yeah, and then Catherine is at the morgue. We learn that the leg was severed post-mortem. Grissom arrives with the rest of the body, or what they assume is the rest of the body, and then is confirmed as the rest of the body.
I do have one other note. So this I wasn't sure how much. So they mentioned in the locker room scene with the shirt,
yes,
right? So they're talking. I think they mentioned that they have a case, right? That's what they mentioned.
Yeah, Sarah comes in and says like, "Hey, we have a case at the fraternity." Yep.
But then she says to him, "You're not going to wear that shirt, are you?" And he goes,
It's
"Yes."
hideous.
But then as she leaves, he starts to unbutton his shirt again.
Yeah,
and
so
he
he puts on a new
changes his shirt.
Yeah.
Well, it's like interesting dynamic, right?
Yeah, a little like he takes it to heart what Sarah said to him.
He puts value in her judgment.
That's a good point. So at the morgue, Grissom brings back in the rest of the body. They ask if a rape kit has been collected. The morgue attendant says, always. And then there's a fairly drawn out, and I know that the first time I watched this, it did make me a little bit squeamish. It doesn't make me squeamish now, where Catherine has to wear the skin of the woman because her fingers are small enough. Grissom can't do it. His fingers aren't small enough. So Catherine has to wear the skin to be able to get usable prints from the waterlogged body.
The only thing I wrote down is, why can't the coroner do this?
Dramatic effect.
Yes, I know.
Dramatic effect. I did also jot down that Grissom's like, oh, we'll know by lunchtime. And I will say that CSI kind of kicked off like a forensic interest for me. Mm-hmm. And one of the biggest things that they complain about CSI is the CSI effect. Like, it's legitimately called the CSI effect. And it's wherein people sitting on a jury think that results are immediate.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And that's not how it works. There was no way that they would know by lunchtime who the victim was trying to run these prints. Like, that's not a realistic time frame whatsoever. So
maybe
just for those of you who are listening that are also interested in forensics, I love CSI, but I do accept that it's not 100% realistic.
I wonder if it's easier or faster now, with
it probably is in some degree.
Database of computers, but when you have a piece of paper with a blotch on it where you've taken a fingerprint, or some other medium that you've taken a fingerprint on, even if you have a database that could do stuff, you have to get it sort of scanned in and into that. Mm-hmm. And I imagine there's preparatory steps, there's quality checks. You probably have to send it at least down to someone else in your department. So yeah, I was like, that's interesting. Yeah, I will say, having served on a very long jury duty, that people really do bring up crime shows.
Oh, I'm sure they do. I have never been called on jury duty.
I got called for jury duty a bunch when I was younger. Never had to serve on a jury. Actually, when I was 18 years old and still in high school at the tail end of my senior year. I had to miss school because that's being in school is not an excuse.
Yeah, legally you have to be there.
And we watched Titanic, and then they set us on at lunchtime. But then I had a bunch of things, and then I moved to where I live now, and for 8 years or something, I had never been called for jury duty, or actually maybe it wasn't. I was 5 or 6 years I hadn't been called for jury duty, and then one day I got a jury duty thing, and we were going to Europe, and I couldn't go, and they were like, "Well, when are you going to be back?" And I was like, "Oh, back this." Okay, so as long as you can show up on this Monday, because there's it's a federal. I went to federal jury duty.
Oh, okay.
And it works a little differently. You have to show up you could potentially have to show up any day for a month.
Okay.
And be sat in a jury. They're that's fine. They knew it was coming. There were 180 people, and they disqualified half of them to seat this jury, and the trial went for over 2 months. And I had a job that thankfully will pay you for whatever period of time you're on jury duty.
That's nice. Every job should, but I'm glad that your job actually did it.
But I also had a boss who definitely held it against me.
That doesn't surprise me.
And I spent you see this every day, Monday to Friday. Go to courtroom. You're there till 5 o'clock. Go home. You're hanging out with the same jurors, and you're not. Yeah, it's interesting. You're not really supposed to be talking about stuff, but people talk about stuff all the time. But that CSI effect, or Law and Order, all the true crime shows and podcasts out there too. Yeah, people really get into it, and they really want to share their opinion every time a piece of evidence gets shown.
Yes, they do. It's called the CSI effect. So after that slightly unsettling scene, we go to Sarah and Nick arriving at the fraternity. They find the victim hanging. No suicide note.
There's one thing in the morgue scene that I wrote down, because they asked about rape, and they're going to do a rape
they
kit.
asked if the rape kit was collected.
They talked about struggle, and she said the right shoulder was dislocated and the skull was fractured.
Okay.
And that
comes up later,
That
guys.
becomes important later, but it's also important for one of my predictions.
Oh, good. Okay.
So I want to make sure we cover that.
So we quickly go to the frat. They find the victim hanging, no suicide note. We then move to Catherine at headquarters. They have magically ID'd the victim in a very short period of time, and they identify her as Wendy Barger, which I had to stop, rewind to grab it. I was like starting to write it as it was going by. So, Wendy Barger. And they also discover that the rape kit is positive for semen, but they're not 100% sure if rape occurred or not. They know that sex occurred. They're not entirely sure if rape occurred or not.
Mm-hmm.
And now we move to Catherine and Grissom talking to the husband. He explains that they have a cabin by Colville Bay, and after some pressing, he also admits that they have not had sex 3 to 4 months, meaning that semen wasn't the husband's.
And they were all over him too, right?
All over him.
Like we don't think you're having sex with your wife.
Yeah, they were like, look at you, look at her.
Catherine was like, I mean, why would you say the average is 1 week if that's what you're at?
Yeah, because he originally said that it was like once a week or once every other week, because that's the average. And then they pushed him further, and he was like, it's been 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. I mean, they did also know that, like, it's like they had this whole thing where it's like, what kind of husband doesn't call in his wife who's been missing for 3 days?
Right.
So,
yeah,
likely quite estranged.
They're looking at the husband with some red flags waving gently around his face. We move on over to Sarah and Nick interviewing. I labeled them the frat bros because I don't know their names at this point. So I was like, they're interviewing frat bros.
I wrote frat boy A and frat boy B.
That's fair.
And I think on the second watching, I confused myself.
Oh, and mixed them up?
Well, no, it's because the first time through, I thought, oh, this is the president and this is his, like, lackey friend.
Okay.
And it was actually the other way around. So I kept calling the guy who's really kind of in charge frat boy
B.
Mm-hmm. And so I was like, wait, why did I write that? Oh, I meant the other guys. So yeah, names could be super important.
They let frat boy, who you thought was frat boy A, do a lot of the talking at the beginning. So you're led to believe that he's the main person because he's the one doing the majority of the talking. While frat boy, technically A, but you labeled him B, was kind of standing in the background.
Oh no, there's still frat boy A and frat boy B.
Yeah.
I mean, I just had to remember which one was.
So they explain that James, the victim, didn't get into the frat, and when Sarah asks, like, how do you think he took that news? They were like, how do you think he took it? AKA, like, you found his body. Yeah. Like, that's obviously how he took it. Womp womp womp.
These guys are so troll, right?
Yes.
Well, especially frat boy B.
I do get their names at some point. I don't have their names at this point, but I do eventually. Another stop, rewind, grab the name.
Hal, I believe, is frat boy B.
It's Kyle and Matt.
Nope, guess not. It's Kyle and Matt. Which one's the president? The guy whose father is
Kyle.
Well, which will come up later. Kyle. So yeah, it's Kyle and Matt. So yeah. So Kyle is particularly like dismissive, I think, of the seriousness of the situation.
Yeah, he's very cavalier about it.
Yeah. It's also like the scene is like the whole premise is like so mind blowing that like they're just like letting these kids like stay in this house, right? Like they haven't like cleared out the whole house.
Yeah, no, they've put. Sarah said in the scene where they found the body, she said, hey, we want to interview all of them, don't let them leave. Mm-hmm. But it still seems like a standard frat house when we're in those scenes with them. Like, it doesn't, you don't see any police officers around or caution tape over the door or anything. They seem pretty freely willing to be able to go wherever they want to.
Yeah, they just have this attitude like, oh yeah, it happened. Oh well, no one cares.
Yep, like we didn't really care about him anyway. He didn't fully pledge, so who cares? We follow Warwick to court, and he meets the judge. So Nick's prediction that this storyline was not over was correct. And Judge is back, and he tells Warwick that there's one last thing that he wants them to do, and then they'll be square, and it's to essentially break the chain of custody for the Henderson rape case because the judge owes the family.
Yeah, like, you don't get to be judged without trading some favors kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is probably sadly very true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we go to a much lighter scene of Sanders, like, jamming out. He's in the lab. Sanders, who Nick was like, does he come back? And I was like, yes, he does. Is back.
He's got a big role in this episode. I was going to say, is the Judge, see, is this where he has that line where they talk about like, oh, I'm on probation still
Yes.
for Warwick and stuff?
Yes.
I wrote down this quote, and it was the judge. He's like, oh, the judge is like, don't worry, I've got your back. And Warwick goes, yeah, I feel you back there.
Yes. This is when that's when
And
that happens.
I was like, I like that line. I don't know why.
It is a good line.
It was a really good line.
So we have Sanders jamming. We find out that the DNA isn't the husband's that's on the boat.
My phone didn't identify that song.
Oh, it didn't?
No. Although they reference like Rage Against the Machine later in the episode.
But he says that he's listening to like a dissertation on like DNA, microbiology or something.
Not music, so I didn't know if that was it. But yeah, it was too brief for my phone to pick up.
And then Grissom promises to tell the husband when they know, so the husband, kind of confronts them, and Grissom says, hey, like, once we know something, we'll let you know. And Catherine, thinks that the wife was seeing someone else.
Yeah.
And we quickly pop over to Warwick checking out evidence, which we are led to assume is the Henderson rape case evidence. So for him to break the custody. Yes, he asked for it. So it's, okay, this is the Henderson rape case. So this is where we're led to believe that he's going to break the chain of custody and let this person go as a favor to the judge. Grissom shows up and lets Warwick know that he's a CSI-3, so they can both, we solve mystery. Both Nick and Warwick can be CSI-3 at the same time.
Well, you know what? I have questions. That won't be answered, but I have them.
Unanswered questions.
We had a time skip. I remember last episode I pointed out
Yes.
they said it had been several weeks.
Mm-hmm.
It's now clearly been a little bit more time. They've certainly had this whole Henderson rape case that we've never heard of before. But so like presumably, and not even presumably, I believe in the last episode, even Warwick was involved in solving the case. And so that would have been his 100th solve if he had no other solves.
True.
And they didn't have a morning breakfast, let's go out and get donuts.
No
before we find out our coworker has died.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't immediately promoted to CSI-3. And Grissom kind of says it like, yeah, I promoted you because you deserve it. He has that sort of connotation, like,
yes.
You do deserve it, you've earned it. And so that just made me think like, did they have a thing where it's like, guys, we're only going to have it, like, I'm thinking back to, because Brass used to be in charge when this competition was going on.
Yes.
Brass is like, we only have it in the butt. I could just picture this from him. One of you gets it. Whoever gets to 100 first is going to be CSI-3, and then they have this big competition, which would just be such a violation of probably, laws around fair compensation. Yeah. But then now it's also like, Vermonti, like, Grissom's actually in charge. Remember last week I was like, what?
There was some debate.
I don't understand the Brass's back part, but Grissom still is in charge. So the boss of the whole thing is still working third shift. Although they do a lot. We skipped over this earlier, but they mentioned they're on another double.
Yes.
Right? And I just put a little note. I was like, I think we're going to get a lot of doubles, because I think it's a lot easier to shoot during the daytime
than it is in the middle of the night.
They may have made a mistake during the pilot by making this the graveyard shift. And I think we're just going to have a lot of doubles for a while. So
we might. We're trying to remain spoiler alert free where we can.
Or they'll all get promoted to daytime shifts.
Yes. We cut on over to Jim Brass eating, and this is definitely a scene where finally humanize Jim Brass a little bit. Like, he's a little bit funny, he's a little bit like camaraderie with the people that he's working with, but he lets Catherine know that, through his interviews, that if Wendy was cheating, then the friends don't know anything about it. Like, the friends are totally in the dark if she's cheating. And there's just like a little like playful back and forth with Catherine and Jim Brass, where he like mentions being married to her, and she's like, oh, like, you wish, or like in your dreams, and he's like, I feel like this is a much needed softening of Jim Brass that we missed in the first 3 episodes, where he was really coming across very harsh. This I feel humanized him a little bit,
taking the edge off.
Taking the edge off. That's a good way to say it.
Old Captain Brass.
Old Captain Brass.
Now just a lonely detective. He still eats in their break room.
He does.
Which
he wants to hang out with the CSIs. They're cool. Science people are cool people.
Team? I'm not really. It's not clear at this point what his current role is.
No. And we have a Catherine and Grissom walk and talk, and as they're starting to do this, Warwick comes up and asks Grissom for guidance, and that kind of like ends that.
He says he's stuck in purgatory.
Yes, he says he's stuck in purgatory.
There, we kind of glossed over this. So when Grissom interrupted him before, he was like hemming and hawing over signing of the evidence, right? Like,
yes, he was definitely having a internal struggle as to whether to do what the judge asked him to do or not.
And then I think in some way, like the whole, hey, you're CSI 3 also because like, I like this job. I don't want to, we
I don't want to compromise what I'm doing.
Whole thing last week with Catherine, where he said we got to do things the right way, right? You can't do, you don't get to decide who's the boss. And I think that's the inflection point for him, right? Is that, and so he sort of like comes back out, and then Grissom's, he's the elderly statesman figure, so he goes to Grissom for judgment. We'll find out more about that later. But I kind of like the way they did that and broke it up into 2 scenes.
Yes, I do too.
I thought it was really good.
We move on over to Nick and Sarah with a new coroner. Like, I guess they have 2 coroners on night shift because this is not the woman that we're used to. They had like...
Oh, no. It's daytime now. Remember, they're doing a double.
Oh, you're right. So this must be the daytime coroner. Okay, you are 100% right. This must be the daytime coroner.
This is one of those 12:30 autopsies that Grissom gets.
So this is daytime coroner with Nick and Sarah. And obviously they're leaning towards this being a suicide. They found him, hung in his room, but the coroner points out that generally speaking with hangings there's teeth marks on the tongue and that there are no teeth marks. So while he did die of asphyxiation, he was not hung. And then there's this hilarious scene where he lifts up the tarp that's on the victim and says, like, how did he get this on his penis?
Yeah, like,
and Nick is so prude and like won't even look. Sir, you have to look at dead bodies all the time. Like, you've solved 100 cases. You've had to seen at least 25 penises at this point.
Yeah, I was thinking, like, you used the word prude. I was like, I don't even know if this is really the right term for it.
Maybe it's
not. Almost homophobic, right? It's like this
you could be right.
Young,
maybe I'm giving
men.
Nick, because I've seen Nick's evolution. Maybe I'm giving Nick the benefit of the doubt, wherein if I was watching this the first time, I'd be like, wow, grow up. It's just another man's penis. Yeah. And he's dead, so don't worry about it.
And maybe it's not the right term because it's not really like fear, but it's more like there's just a general discomfort that some men have with other naked men and things like that they usually often get over in gym class. And you would think the angle of like frat boy that Nick played, like, you would think that, and also, years of being in CSI, it wouldn't be a thing, but it does play for that funny moment where Sarah's kind of like, what is the problem here, dude?
Yeah, Sarah's like, I'll look at it. Like, doesn't bother me whatsoever. I'll take a gander. It's part of the case. We need to figure out what's going on here.
And leave it a little mysterious, too. They don't tell you what it is.
They just say, like, how did this get on? They don't say what this is. They just say, how did this get on his penis?
And they've alluded to this already, right? That Nick was in a fraternity.
Yes.
And throughout this episode, there's a lot of like, I kind of know what's going on in all these moments, right? Mm-hmm. And it's like, is this embarrassment over like, I can't believe I used to be that guy?
Right.
And so that was the other component where I was kind of like, I'm not really sure what they were trying to say there, but something along. But it is kind of funny that he's just uncomfortable with it. And
yeah, get over him.
Get over yourself.
We return to the frat house, and there's a back and forth where Nick and Sarah are trying to get, we still don't have their names at this point, but frat bros to admit that they practice hazing. They're adamantly, no, it's against the rules. We could lose the house. We don't do any hazing.
Yeah. Well, it's also the first time you get this. The state passed the law, like this kid who thinks he knows the law.
Yes.
Kyle.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a couple hazing scenes, so I'm trying to make sure that I remember the timing right, but they ask about the ink here, right?
Yeah, so they let them know that they found the, like, writing on James' penis, and that's when the frat bros cave a little bit and say, well, there is an initiation. We don't do hazing, but there's an initiation into the fraternity. And they cut to a reenactment of, the the boys who are looking to be initiated into the fraternity, they're all in like a few rows, and official frat bros are saying, hey, it's time to be signed. And they also, this is the scene where they question like James's like drive to really like, do you really want to be part of this fraternity? Like, you're so low in points. Don't, like, they're kind of questioning him. And this I had to laugh at this. Again, I don't know if this was like a 2000 but they like mention his Johnson, and then they go to explain to Sarah what a Johnson is, and Sarah's like, I know what a Johnson is. Like, I don't need you to stop and tell me what a Johnson is.
You got 100 points for a signature on your Johnson.
Yes, on your Johnson.
And the signatures are from girls on campus, although
but Kyle
they typically go down to sorority row.
Yes, they're supposed to go down to the sorority and get signatures at the sorority, but Kyle at this point claims that he caught James cheating and he was signing himself.
And they kick him out and they dump beer all over him and humiliate him, and they make a big deal about the humiliation.
Yes, and how is that not hazing?
Yep. So I have a prediction here that frat boy B, who is really Kyle, because of his general aggression that he's had towards this kid the whole time, I'm thinking like they got kicked out. And so my prediction this time was that they're going to get in a fight and he's going to like choke the kid out. Okay. Right? And then he stages the hanging after that. So, I mean, which is not 100% accurate, but we did start together. I do have an update to this later on, though. So we'll wait till we get there.
All right. Yeah.
Where I sort of a little bit more accurate, I think, but with a lot more information. So, okay. But yeah, that was the first prediction. Is I was like, okay, well, clearly he didn't hang himself at this point, right? And it's like, we're thinking these two people, this guy hates this other guy for some reason, right? And that much I could tell. So I was like,
you're like, why does he hate him?
Yeah. He's like, later. Yeah. I was like, so my guess is they get a fight. He kills the kid and then he's covering it up. So I did correctly guess the person. I just didn't correctly guess the motivation.
The cause of death and the motivation. Yeah. We move on to a different storyline with Warwick calling the judge, where he's letting him know that he wants to meet him in person. And then we quickly cut back to Catherine and Grissom with the night shift coroner, where we discover that there was green paint in Wendy's head wound. There was no water in the lungs, so she did not drown. And she also had a very nice dinner that included calamari.
Fried calamari.
Which I have not had in a while, and I do like me some fried calamari.
It's one of those things I just had to let slide. I'm not entirely sure you could tell if the calamari was fried 3 hours after
by the digestive process at that point. That's fair.
Could have had like French fries and calamari or something.
Yeah. And we follow that vein to Catherine and Grissom arriving at a restaurant. They ask a waitress if Wendy was there. And Catherine says, oh, she ordered the calamari. The waitress quickly quips back, everybody orders the calamari, because I guess this is the only place near Vegas or near this like lake that you can order calamari. Yeah.
I have this note, like this is like this trope that is developing where it's like, this is the only place in X miles where such and such can happen that Grissom always knows about.
Yep.
Right. And, there's only so many gold mines between, with next to
They're able to narrow down the search very easily. Very easily, which I don't think is how it works in real life.
They use that trick a lot, but yeah. And I think at this point it was the real time I ever done the prediction is a little bit later, but at this point I think it's pretty obvious that we're all on, team she was cheating.
Yes. So the waitress admits that recollects that she came in with a guy. He's a regular, he's a good tipper, and so we follow that to Catherine and Grissom talking to Mr. Swelko, aka the man that Wendy is cheating with. He can't believe that she's dead. He thought, he's in the process of divorcing from his wife. They're separated. He thought Wendy was going to file for divorce, but she was afraid of hurting her husband. And he seems pretty forthcoming. He says after dinner they went to the marina, or maybe not after dinner they went to the marina. They made love. She left.
Dinner was at they had dinner at the marina. That's where the restaurant is. And this is important because they said she would park her car at the marina. They take the boat from the marina to his place.
So to not be able to track her car.
Her car in their driveway. Yeah, they didn't want her car in the driveway. And all I can think is, like, you're worried that, like, this guy who probably lives half a mile up the road in his giant mansion that they showed on the lake, like, someone's going to see your car. You were at a busy restaurant.
Right.
In a marina with him for dinner, wearing, I assume a nice outfit. They never actually... They keep insinuating that these people knew each other for another reason, and they never.
Yeah, so they knew each other casually, but they didn't establish what that actually meant.
And so I just assume that it's because they have property in the same area, and so they've met each other at social events and things, which is why, like, I think, like, the marina's fine. But all that being said, that is still an important thing. I actually at this point don't think Swelko has anything to do.
Okay. You think Swelko's innocent at this point?
Yeah, he's got quite the cry going,
He does seem genuine.
He's very forthright with information. I, at this point, was ready to make a prediction that I thought Swelko's wife killed her.
No, I mean, that would make sense, right?
This character we haven't met yet.
We haven't met, but coming from left field.
But has been alluded to.
Mm-hmm.
He's just leaving his wife, right? He just broke up with her, right? That's what he says.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is one of those things, like, they're trying to trick me. They haven't shown this character yet. And I was like, wife. I said, I wrote the husband is too weird. I was like, something else is going to happen with this guy, right? But, like, I thought he was going to, like, ruin the case and they weren't going to be able to make an arrest or something.
Yep.
Which isn't really true. But, yeah, I was like, Swelko isn't the murderer. I was like, I think it's gonna have to be like his wife.
All right.
And that was my prediction at the end of that scene, and it didn't go well.
That's not what happened.
Truthfully, any prediction I made at that point wasn't gonna go well.
Well, speaking of the husband, Catherine and Grissom leave Mr. Swelko's house to find the husband outside, where he admits that he followed them, and which I wrote in parentheses, creepy.
Oh yeah.
And obviously, I know how this episode ended, but I still wanted to note that was creepy, that the husband followed them and was, like, just outside the house. And Catherine tells Grissom that she, wants to tell him about the affair and that she had wished she knew about Eddie's affair. We learn a lot more about Eddie going forward,
I was just
like, FYI. This is a spoiler alert. I don't mind spoiling for you. We learn a whole lot more about Eddie as the series progresses.
I assume they keep mentioning him. I feel like they were teeing him up to be a referential character.
Yeah, he definitely comes back in quite a few episodes and is talked about quite frequently. So we learn a lot more about Eddie.
I was, like, surprised. The husband, it's so weird to follow them.
So weird. So weird. Like, and they don't seem
arrest that dude.
Yeah, they don't seem perturbed by it at all, and that does not seem natural to me.
She's very quick to want to tell him. There's something she said in the scene with Brass, though. She alluded to, like, people who don't cheat never suspect the spouse is cheating, right? She was talking about her personal experiences, and so she's empathizing with the husband at this point, right? That's why she wants to tell him.
Yes,
because of her own past.
We have a quick scene with Catherine and Grissom in his office where they talk about the boat not being at the marina.
Yep.
So they go look, boat's not at the marina. We quickly pop over to Sarah and Nick with the coroner giving their prelim where they found raw calf's liver in the throat. And so the cause of death is choking. They also found microscopic fabric fibers in the throat as well.
You said it was cat liver? Cod liver?
Calves.
Oh,
CALF. Calves. I did. This was another pause. Go back.
Yeah.
Watch it again with subtitles on to see what they were saying.
I was not really sure. I was just thinking, like, liver is notoriously bad smelling, so you kind of see where this is going.
My mom enjoys it. My mom will eat some liver and likes it. I have never tried it. I can't. I look at it and I'm like, We pop on over to Sarah and Nick interrogating Kyle. He's saying, he has no idea. They're saying to him, hey, tell me about the liver. Nick is trying to kind of reason with him and telling him, hey, like, I was you, man, right? Like, I was a frat bro. You're a frat bro. Yeah. Like, we can commiserate both being frat bros.
They have all these sayings they keep bringing up, like, that I'm sure people...
Yeah, it's like for the house and...
I'm sure it's common. I was never in a frat.
And so they frat bros claim that James begged for one more shot, and they did this swallowing raw liver trick. He accidentally choked. They gave the Heimlich. It didn't work. They freaked out. There was a lot to lose. They would lose the house. So they, like, Kyle and Matt then, like, strung him up and made it look like a suicide to not lose their fraternity house. And Kyle mentions that his dad is a top offense attorney. Like, just so you know, Daddy is an attorney, and
I'm only gonna get manslaughter, community service, right?
Yep.
So, like, yeah, you know, because, like, we've also just been belonging to the police for the last, 3 days, or whatever, 8 hours, however long it's been.
Whatever. This show does not do great about letting you know the time elapsed. So now we get a Sarah and Nick walk and talk, where Nick tells Sarah to slow down, which, again, not the biggest fan. I feel like this is leaning a little bit towards the sexist side of things.
I feel like it was delivered poorly. Like, it didn't have to be that way, right?
Yes.
It's like just like if the Grissom would have been like, okay, I hear you, but let's take this one step at a time.
Yes. I think the delivery was not great on this one. But they do end up talking about if frat bros had performed the Heimlich maneuver, there would be trauma to the body, which I do know because I have been trained several times in the Heimlich maneuver, and they tell you, not even the Heimlich, but in, like, mouth-to-mouth and CPR, that basically you have to accept that you're going to probably break their ribs in the process.
Like, if you don't, you probably aren't doing it right.
Yes, which is terrifying, but get used to it.
Yeah, it's those things are there to prevent things from crushing down on those organs and making them do things they're not supposed to do.
Right.
Boom, you're trying to do that because they're not working right. Like,
yep.
You're trying to create a forceful.
Yep. So Sarah and Nick are back with daytime coroner. There is no proof of the Heimlich maneuver being performed. Surprise. And they determine that the penis writing is spelled out Jill 2 Delta. So this is Jill from the sorority that's represented by 2 deltas. So they talk to Jill. And crazy enough, guess who her boyfriend is?
Well, I thought it was Hal, but apparently it's Kyle.
It's Kyle. Hal/Kyle. And she admits to doing the signing. Like, she has no, like, she doesn't see anything wrong with this. She says basically it's tit for tat, right? Like, we sign them, they sign us. This is a fair exchange. He said he needed this. No big deal. Like, she sees no problems with this situation.
So at this point, I have a full prediction that it's definitely kills him rage over the girlfriend. Like, it was intentional, right?
Yes.
Basically,
this was not an accidental death at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't like I was picking on him extra. It was like, oh no, you didn't like this kid. He got your girlfriend to sign his Johnson.
What's a Johnson? What do we mean by that?
I mean, great name for the episode, by the way.
Pledging Mr. Johnson.
Pledging Mr. Johnson.
It is awesome.
And that his name was Johnson. And so, yeah, I was like, I don't think we knew about the way the cod made him choke, but it was pretty obvious that they made him choke on the cod, right?
Yeah.
And it's like the details of how weren't super important.
They do. So we do talk about it a little bit because Sarah and Nick return to the original crime scene, and that's when they find the fabric noose.
Yes.
Which Nick immediately calls a dingle dangle.
Which I assume is a thing. Like,
maybe it's a thing. I didn't research it, but it must be a thing because he immediately is like, "Oh, dingle dangle," and I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, he knows what all these things are, right? He knew what a signing was. He knows what making
frat
someone
bros to
swallow
frat
food
bros
on the string, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like implying that he's done all these things before.
Right. And we pop on over to Warwick and Sanders doing their own little walk and talk, and this is, I think, just a reason to explain what Grissom is doing as far as his experiment to find the boat. This is let's clue the audience in as to what Grissom is doing, because then we move on to what I felt like it was a fairly substantially long montage cuts between Grissom's wave pool boat experience and Catherine physically searching for the boat. I felt this was a very long montage.
I thought this was a great montage. I wrote as such, this is a great montage. I was like, the scene switching, the sort of 80s funk music. I was like, I'm all over this.
I did like it.
I was all about this montage. I was like, they were like, we want to have a montage, and this is what it is.
We're doing it up. 80s music, the whole, like, setting the scene. And
I was pretty sure I knew exactly how it was going to end, right?
Yep. So
Catherine
the end
was
of
going to find the boat. Grissom was going to figure it out at the same time.
Exactly. So Catherine finds the boat south of Bering Point Bridge, and that is also what Grissom's experiment showed at the end. And we go back to the Warwick storyline. So it's the judge and Warwick at the park. Warwick is telling the judge that he needs assurances, and when the judge admits to what he's asking for, essentially, that's when Warwick signals and a whole bunch of cop cars show up, including one that contains Jim Brass, which evidently they're bros now, which they definitely were not bros in episode 1 and 2, but they're definitely bros now. Cop cars show up and they tell the judge that he's being taken into custody for obstruction of justice and a whole bunch of other charges.
Not just a whole bunch of other things, also 7 articles of scumbag.
Yes, 7 articles.
Which I wrote down.
That's the most important, really.
I was like, what a great Brass. That's Brass at its finest.
And I will say, Warwick has a great line here, where as they're leading him away, Warwick says, "Told you nobody owns me."
Yep.
And
which was the line he used before, right?
Yes, in either episode 1 or 2. I can't remember exactly which one.
I think it was episode 2. Because in episode 1, we didn't know the judge was a bad guy.
That is true. I think you're right. I think it's episode 2.
It was just like, place a bet for me and I'll give you a
Yep,
award.
nope. I think you're 100% right. I think it was episode 2.
Episode 2 was like, no, I'm an evil supervillain.
Yeah, we were like, no, you're terrible. Wow. We pop on over to Sanders and Grissom in the lunchroom. Sanders is asking Grissom, husband or boyfriend. Grissom seems almost appalled at this question, and Sanders lets him know this was something he learned from Grissom, in where when a spouse dies, it's almost always the lover or the betrayed. And Grissom seems, again, affronted that he said this.
At this point, I would like to double down on my prediction that Swelko's wife is the killer.
That's fair.
I thought they were, but then I wrote in my notes, but we haven't met her yet. That's probably not. I just said, but haven't met, ? I was like, wife even more likely to be killer, but haven't met yet.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like, all right, they want you to think it's going to be person A, person B. Right? They're putting that thought into your head, right? But also, his wife would have also been betrayed. So it was like not quite exactly the two people. Like, right? Sanders is like, oh, it's going to be a person A or person B. And it's like Grissom, because Grissom has all these, like, he's Mr. Jump to conclusions, right?
Yep.
It's like, oh, it's only ever this or that, right? And he's retelling the story of Grissom telling him that. And then thinking like, oh, but the Grissom angle is he's going to think a step further. Somebody else was betrayed as well.
Yes.
And I was like, oh yeah, I get this.
It's the wife.
I was ready to double down on it. If this was actually Vegas, I would have been like, I would like to double down. Hit me one more time. I'm gonna get a 20. I'm gonna get a blackjack here. Yeah. Which is not a blackjack.
As we try to figure out this mystery, we move on over to Catherine and Grissom investigating the boat. Catherine finds skin on the boat. Grissom, again, not listening. Again, tuning out the people that he's working with. Can't be bothered to listen to people. Tunes out Catherine and finds blood.
It was just like the dirt scene.
Yes.
Like almost on purpose.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, which does set up a scene later on in this episode. So I'm a little more okay with this one because it partially helps set up a scene for later. So Grissom says that we need to bring the boyfriend in, Mr. Swelko, in. And so we see Jim Brass leaving the interrogation room with Mr. Swelko. He lets Catherine and Grissom know that he supposedly cut his hand while cleaning fish, and that's how his blood ended up in the boat, was because he cut his hand trying to clean fish.
Which they don't really come back to, but they don't really need to.
No, they don't. They don't.
Yeah, they're like, we're gonna hold you here. We're gonna go corroborate that.
Yeah.
And then if it's true, I guess we're gonna have to let you go. I crossed my wires. I thought they brought the husband in too, but no, the husband
shows up.
He just showed up.
He does another creepy husband thing where he just shows up. So he shows up again. Catherine ends up playing interference and kind of bringing him down the hallway away from Mr. Swelko. And this is when Catherine does tell him about the affair, and she tells him that she's sorry. But she does tell him about the affair.
So this is actually where I had that kind of note from before. I was like, but I made a new prediction, which is the husband is going to kill the boyfriend, right?
Womp, womp, womp.
But I was like, boyfriend's wife is the killer, but like we haven't met her yet.
We still haven't met this woman.
I was saying it earlier, and I was like, I swear I wrote that down, and it's because it's in the next scene down. And it's like this is where I was like, well, how is she going to be the killer? We haven't even met her. Like, what a small bit part. They're just going to show up and arrest her.
No, just,
but I
it's
still
gonna be like the end of How I Met Your Mother, where we meet her for like one like
Yes.
1/100th of the show, and then they kill her off anyway. So who cares?
I met your mother, and now she's dead.
Now she's dead. Spoiler alert. Then we have the conversation with Catherine and Grissom regarding the affair, where Grissom is telling Catherine, like, hey, you can't make this about Eddie. And this is when Catherine kind of unloads on him and says, you know what, do you want me to just be like you know, alone, doing your crossword puzzles in your house, no interactions?
This is a heated scene. There are
this is a very heated scene. And I want to give credit to both the actors here, that I felt like they both delivered it very well.
Yep. I think you also get the people who know each other very well, right, who have a history together.
Yes.
They can have these moments like this in a much different way than people who don't have a friendship. And she's hitting at him really hard because she's so frustrated with him, right? Catherine is very frustrated that, you know, Grissom isn't appreciating her human side here, right?
Yep.
And so she's tearing into him, and then Grissom is just like, yeah, I'm all those things.
Yeah, he says he's deficient. He says, like, I'm deficient in many things.
Yeah, he's not afraid or intimidated by these things right there. He's like, actually, it's a townhouse.
And they're not genius, they're advanced.
Yeah,
when he's talking about his crossword puzzles
are genius, not advanced, right? Because she's just like, but they know each other, and it's that, I don't know, sometimes you're friends, you got to fight it out a little.
Yeah.
And then you're fine afterwards, and that was their frustration. But it was a really good scene. It was really well acted because it just felt like something you've seen two people do before.
Yes. And it kind of wraps up with Grissom. Again, he admits that he's deficient in certain things, but he says that he never messes up his cases with personal stuff. And Catherine kind of has the, like, mic drop moment of what personal stuff.
Yeah. And there's like layers of truth to that too, because Grissom his job is so important to him.
Yes.
It's a big part of who he is and how he evaluates his self-worth.
Yes.
And that's why he would never let his personal life get in the way. But a lot of other people, and Catherine is an example of this to hopefully the audience, because I think the
audience is supposed to be more with Catherine on this side.
Yeah. The average viewer is more with Catherine. Is like, your job is a job, and you can love your job and you can take it seriously, but like, you have a lot of other components to your life that make up who you are, right? And you can't discount those as part of your personhood. And so it's a great juxtaposition. There are two characters of different ways of looking at it, and they've had this. I mean, we're 4 episodes in, and we've had this push and pull of like putting the job first, putting your life first. Right? It's like, oh, can we let the good guys win this time? No, we got to do the evidence, right?
Right.
Oh, Warwick, you let your personal ambitions get ahead, and then that, you know, with the judge, right? Instead of waiting and doing it the right way. And so, like, many episodes in a row, we've had this thing where it's like Grissom is like, no, like the job has to come first. Like, you can't compromise the job. You can't compromise the job. And for Catherine, it's like, you could tell she could not have cared one iota. You could have fired her if you had to tell her when she was being cheated on. She would rather have known.
Right.
Than continue to live this life with this person who is cheating on her, pretending everything's okay. It's a really big deal to her.
Right.
And so they're at odds because they just have different belief systems at this point, right?
Yeah, and different lived experiences.
Yeah, and so, but I think it's a really good scene because it captures that, and this tension was going not only all episode, but it's actually kind of been building for a few episodes, and then it ends with like this truce, right?
Yes.
Or I don't know if it's this.
That's later. There's a later. That happens in a later scene.
But they get their stuff out and they move forward, and that's also a really good like human story, right? Like you have to talk things through, And you're not always going to find the perfect solution. But if you don't talk about your stuff with the people you're close to, you're never going to work it out.
Yeah. Sometimes you have to have the hard conversations. Doesn't mean they're going to be fun, but you still need to have them. And we talk about hard conversations. We move on over to Nick and Sarah interrogating Matt. And they're basically asking him how pissed off Kyle was about his girlfriend signing James as Johnson. And they're kind of leaning on how Matt might be able to save the house if he comes clean. Like his only way to save the fraternity is if he's honest about what actually happened. And Nick also lets him know that they found the string. Mm-hmm. And this is when we see the true reenactment of what happens. So we see James showing off the signature, how upset Kyle was, Kyle telling him to meet him upstairs, and then Kyle letting him know that, like, or telling him basically to get into the fraternity, you just have to trust me to pull this liver back out. Like, you're going to swallow it, you have to trust me to pull it back out. And then he just lets James choke on it.
Made it look like maybe there was, like, he set it up so that he knew it wouldn't, he could yank it right off and the liver would be stuck. And I don't know if we are supposed to believe his goal was to kill him or to just cause him a great amount of discomfort and then he would, like, choke it up, right? But he has this really sinister, like, enjoying it too much look on his face.
Yes, he did. He's definitely
like touching himself, and he's like really creepy in the reenactment, which like Matt wouldn't even know. Like that's just like the part you get to see as the audience that like obviously Matt wouldn't know, but yeah. And then Matt comes in right in the reenactment.
Yes, and this is when they still like they string him up. They make it look like a suicide.
And he goes. Importantly, he goes, "Don't worry, my dad will protect the chapter."
Yes, our dad. Yeah, and
I want to say that they've been talking to Matt. Matt has killed a person.
Yes.
Or not Matt. They've been talking to Kyle. Kyle has killed a person. Kyle's dad is a high-powered defense attorney.
Yes.
A death has happened. His son is a suspect. Mm-hmm. Does he not like his son?
It doesn't seem that. Yeah, it seems like he does not like him.
Don't talk to the police. Right. Lawyers are the first people to tell you never talk to the police.
No, even if you're innocent. Here's a fun fact, American audiences. Even if you're 100% innocent, don't talk to the police. Immediately get an attorney. Yep. Fun fact. Even if you are 100% innocent, do not talk to the police. Get an attorney.
Yeah. If they're asking you, if you think for a second that they're asking you for information and that they don't think that what you've said is 100% true the first time, you should probably not be talking. Yeah. Because all they're trying to do is build a case against you. Mm-hmm. And whether or not, and you never know if the cop you're talking to is a good person or a bad person, right? Is going to follow the right conclusions or wrong conclusions. But like you have to always look out for yourself in these situations, and that's why we have lawyers. But if like your dad's attorney, that's like the one loophole in the whole episode. I actually didn't think of this at all the first watch through. It was the second watch through. I was like, this kid talks about his dad so much, and yet he never shows up to protect him from incriminating himself.
Nope. Doesn't just lets them dig that hole and jump right on in it. So speaking of that, we move to Nick and Sarah talking to Kyle in jail, letting him know that his dad is not going to be able to help him, and that his buddy flipped.
He was already arrested. He was already in jail. Like, did he ask for his dad, who was a lawyer? Because you probably shouldn't come in and talk to him afterwards. Because that's definitely not legal. That's not how the Miranda rights work. But yeah, it was kind of like, where is Dad? Dad took a sweet time. I don't think Dad likes Kyle much. Yeah. Maybe Kyle's like the fourth son. You know what I mean? Like the first three.
He's like, I got enough of them. It doesn't really matter if this one disappears.
Third marriage or something.
So we go back to another storyline with Grissom and Catherine looking at the boat. They realize that they ran out of gas. Grissom wants Catherine to get inside of the boat, where there's a very awkward more harder as he's telling her to pull on the cord to start.
I missed that.
The boat. It's awkward. And then go ahead.
I had to be like, okay, this is like for the audience and show, but like, I'm not the kind of person who would take that situation very well. I was like, if you have something to tell me, just tell me. Just tell me. Right? Don't make me take
or
provide me a little more information. Like get in the boat and pull, imagine you're hurt. Get in the boat, pull on a few times. Let me know, how does your shoulder feel? And they get in there and pull a bunch of times. You're like, oh, you're right. You're like, like Catherine wouldn't believe him if that's like the kind of reveal, but it's for TV, right?
It's for TV.
It's for the audience at home who doesn't know what's going to happen. You get that moment. But I was like, you guys just had a big fight, and I was like, this is like, you're not treating her like an adult right now.
No. And we transition to another reenactment. The reenactment of this scene where we see that Wendy's out on the boat. It runs out of gas. In her attempt to get it going again, she's pulling the line up. She ends up dislocating her shoulder, hits her head on the side of the boat, and then falls into the water. And Grissom and Catherine come to realize that it was just an accident. No one killed Wendy. I mean, it was an accident.
Wendy killed Wendy.
Wendy killed Wendy, but not like purposely. Wendy killed Wendy. Accidentally, Wendy killed Wendy.
Unlike Catherine, Wendy thought that you could just keep pulling on an engine and it would start when you're out of gas. But also, like, good for Wendy because they make a big deal that she died before she was in the water.
Yes.
So that head trauma must have been
severe.
Something else. Mm-hmm. But if you have to go, instantaneous. I don't care.
Yes.
Is so much better.
100%.
Drowning. I have a bunch of sort of like morbid fears of like dying in general, but like if it's gonna happen, all I really want in life is to not know it's coming.
Yes, no, that's fair.
100%
fair.
I just want to live my life, and then maybe it's just over randomly. That's fine.
Yep.
I if I had a choice, I would choose that. Drowning is got to be one of those things where you just know you're screwed. It's painful. It goes on for a while. So I'm happy for Wendy that it was apparently over in like a second because it doesn't take long to fall in the water.
No.
But yeah, that head, and they said they had this whole thing with the head, also that it wasn't bleeding or anything. So
no,
they never really said if she broke her neck or anything. Like
no, they just said
what
like
made it so instantaneous. But yeah,
just instantaneous. Yeah,
presumably that head trauma killed her before she hit the water.
So we have a quick scene before we get to the wrap up of the Grissom and Catherine case where Warwick and Grissom are talking, and Grissom tells Warwick that he's proud of him, but also warns him that the judge has a lot of soldiers. Yep. So there's a heartfelt, hey, I'm really proud of you, you did the right thing, but also watch your back.
Yeah, so I don't know if the judge thing is over or it's coming on. We'll
find out.
I'll have to wait and find out. I also like the notion that the judge is going to get off, right? And then he's going to be a judge again, and then Warwick's going to have to deal with him. Yeah. Also, they haven't really talked about Warwick. You still, did all those other things for the judge. Like, you're culpable to that.
Right.
So we'll have to see what happens.
We've learned that this show, they don't really like prosecuting a lot of people. They seem to let a lot of people go for a lot of things.
That's for Law and Order Las Vegas to cover. Like
it's not for CSI.
This is about the crime scene investigation, not crime scene trials.
And so we wrap up the Wendy case with Grissom and Catherine arriving at Swelko's house, where Nick's prediction is correct, and the husband, one of them, yes, the husband killed Mr. Swelko because he thinks that Mr. Swelko killed his wife.
Which I feel a little. It also makes me feel a little bad because it means Grissom was right. Right? It's like, Catherine, yeah, you kind of killed this guy.
Yeah, like his blood sort of on your hands, my friend.
Yeah.
Even though they called a truce, still I was correct and you were not.
And they fade to black, which is important because I want to say we did not have a perp walk in this episode.
No perp walk. See, I told you it wasn't always a thing.
Yeah.
No perp walk.
Everyone in a line, slightly staggered off.
No.
Slow motion video.
Not every episode.
They must have cut it. I mean, Kyle easily.
They had to have filmed it.
When did Kyle get in jail? When did they actually arrest him? So
we'll never know.
I'll have to go buy the DVDs now and check for deleted scenes.
All right, so that's the end of the episode. Nick, what are your thoughts on this episode?
I like this. This was a good episode. I was thinking about you were saying like last episode that it wasn't like the two people die, two investigations. I was like, this felt like really formulaic. Like this is the pattern that the show is going to follow. Work was kind of just like blowing in the wind most of the episode. I was actually thinking like he didn't take the day off, but he also didn't really do anything all day. I mean, he just showed up. I'm sure there were things going in the background, but he just kind of showed up to sting the judge at the end. But Warwick is still, like, for whatever reason, my favorite character in the show.
Okay.
So I want a little more Warwick, but we got a little bit of a switch up. I don't know that we've really had a Catherine Grissom combo.
Pair up?
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be right.
So I like the teams keep changing up. That was good. Yeah, that was pretty good. I had some predictions. Unfortunately, the wife was not the killer.
No, no. But that was a good thought. I appreciated that angle, even though it wasn't correct. I appreciated that angle.
Yep. But yeah, no, it was good. I liked it. How about you?
Yeah, so this is like a middle of the road episode for me. Don't love it, don't hate it. I will say that I do enjoy that we got to learn a little bit more about the characters. So we got to see Sanders being playful. We got to learn that Grissom is an introvert, like an extreme introvert outside of work. We see Warwick evolving and confronting the judge. So, I think I definitely like those aspects of it. I think otherwise it's just it's an okay episode. Nothing terrible, nothing great.
It feels like they're starting to lay some more things. We kind of skipped over. They had the whole scene with the bug, the tarantula, right? They referenced the bugs in the first episode for Grissom.
Yes.
They said he was a bug guy last episode, and so they made sure to have him with a bug this episode and talk about it. And I thought, like, okay, they've got a writer's room now. Right, they're thinking about their plot into the future, right? Because it's a new show. You say it's a middle of the road episode. There's only four episodes. So if I were to rank them, 1 to 4, like I don't know, I probably wouldn't rank this as my favorite episode. I really like the casino episode.
Yeah, I think I would say out of these 4 episodes, that's probably also my favorite episode of the 4 episodes would be the casino one.
But it's good, and I think it's very different than, say, like last episode, which I don't think I could watch a show of like kidnapper, only thing. But they also no Grissom toys in this episode.
No,
there were no Grissom Grissom bought this at a yard sale in 1986 for things. There's I did wonder why they no longer have access to a helicopter when they were looking for a boat on a lake. Maybe they
only for packages, not for boats.
High profile case. Someone's life was on the line. It's possible. Do you know, for a long time I didn't know the boat was like a dinghy.
You thought it was like a yacht?
Yeah. Have you seen that guy's house?
That's true. But to be fair, that's the boyfriend's house, not the husband's house. We never really see the husband's house.
Yeah. Well, the husband was I was thinking it was the boyfriend's boat or something. But yeah, there were no real toys. But yeah, I liked it. It was a good episode.
Okay.
I look forward to learning more.
Yeah, so we will learn more next week, where we review Season 1, Episode 5, titled Friends and Lovers. And in the meantime, feel free to follow us on Facebook. We are Who Are You, a CSI podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Who Are You, CSI Pod. Or if you want to send us an email, whoareyouscipod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your feedback. All right, talk to you next week.
Thank you.